I finally have it! It's so beautiful! Brandon Sanderson has written over 6 million published words. Holy crap. And last year, he was responsible for the largest Kickstarter in history, raising $41 million for 4 books he wrote in secret during the Panorama. Here in my hands is secret book number 3, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and it is just lovely. I'll tell you all about this and also my experience listening to it on Spotify and Speechify because Sanderson has taken a stand against Audible. Let's put you right there. Yeah? Okay. So what does this book classify as? I would definitely call this a YA love story with our 2 19-year-old protagonists. We are once again reading this in Hoyd's voice after taking a little break with the Frugal Wizard's Guide. He is telling us the story of Yumi and the painter, and just like with Tress, he takes a break every now and then to clarify things for us. This book takes place sometime after the events of the Stormlight series. Hoyd is traveling around with Design, and he also makes reference to the time my memory was stolen. If I had to take a guess, I would say that these books he wrote take place after the Stormlight series, sometime after book 10, with whatever climax happens on Roshar, and Hoyd and Design are touring the Cosmere. This is most certainly a love story, and probably more romance than you've ever seen from this author before. Remember, these books were not written for us. Originally, they were written for his wife, and she is the one that encouraged him to publish them publicly. She has always wanted to see more romance in his novels, and so he did that for her with this book. While I definitely enjoyed this book, I am on the opposite side of Mrs. Sanderson. I like the fact that there is very little romance in his book. Few authors are able to progress a story and a romance at the same time, and it's 10 times worse if the characters discover sex. As usual, Sanderson gives us fantastic world building with interesting mechanics, and bonus, you get 2 worlds in this book. I'll give you a quick synopsis of the setting. I won't spoil anything for you, just what you're going to find out in like the first 4-ish chapters. As usual, the ending is very good on this one. So we've got these 2 separate characters we get introduced to. First is Nikoro, or Painter, as he likes to call himself. Painter lives in a dark and cold world, and he is a nightmare painter. The city that he lives in is surrounded by this thick darkness, and every now and then a nightmare comes through. Now at first they're insubstantial, but if they're not tracked and dealt with, they feed on people's thoughts and emotions, and they grow stronger. Since these are spirit creatures that subsist on thought, they respond to strong emotions and thoughts. So the painters track them down, and they focus on painting them as something similar to what they look like, but harmless. The focused thought turns them into the thing, and they disappear. Oftentimes they have long spindly arms, so Painter likes to paint them as bamboo. Now Painter's an interesting character and kind of funny because he wants his job to be cooler than it is. For all that a nightmare painter sounds kind of crazy, it's really more akin to a beat cop in a small town where every now and then you might have to make an arrest. But Painter wants to believe that it's cooler than that. The other painters hang out together, they go on patrol together, but he wants to believe that he is a lone dark warrior guarding the helpless in the night, burdened by purpose. In reality, he's just an awkward 19-year-old making a crap wage and living in a small apartment. The city he lives in was modeled off of modern-day Japan, according to the author. There is no sun, but the city is powered by an energy source called Heion. They are 2 thick, bluish-purplish lines that run through the city hanging in the air. Smaller lines come off of them and power everything. They act as hot and cold lines, so anything that's hooked up to both has power running through it. Everything is colored by these bluish-purplish neon Heions, and it's a pretty big city. No Harajuku girls or anime is specifically mentioned, but it's basically a Japanese neon city. Yumi, on the other hand, is entirely opposite. She lives in a bright, hot world where the ground itself is so hot you can cook food on it, and thermal jets rise up out of the ground and keep lighter things afloat. Sanderson said he modeled this world after traditional Korea, so that influences the dress, the food, the architecture. They don't have advanced technology like Painter's World, but they do have specialized tools made from the spirits, and Yumi calls them. She has the job of Yoki Hijo, the girl of commanding primal spirits. Her job consists of calling the spirits by making rock sculptures. She stacks multiple structures in interesting and intricate designs, and it grabs their attention. They show up, kind of like Creation Spren from the Stormlight books. When they show up, she then communes with them and asks them to become the form of whatever the village needs. Lights, harvesting equipment, whatever. She has a very strict ceremonial life. She is fed ceremonially. She is washed ceremonially. She walks ceremonially. You get it, right? It's very constricting. She is bright, hot world and orderly, and Painter is cold, dark world and sloppy. So after the introductions, the story really kicks off on the same day. Painter notices a trail of a nightmare right after his shift. He tracks it down and he finds a stable nightmare that has obviously gone unnoticed and is strong enough to do real harm, but he manages to scare it off. That same day, Yumi does her stacking, and one of the spirits shows up and tells her, "We're trapped, you need to help us." Then they wake up in Yumi's world, but Painter is in her body. Everybody sees Yumi, but Painter is in control, while Yumi is invisible. When they go to sleep, they wake up in Painter's world, and he is invisible, except Yumi is there in her body. People do see her. And they go back and forth every time they go to sleep. So together, they have to figure out what is going on, how do we stop it, but with this difficulty of going back and forth in each other's worlds. So, what works and what doesn't? Well, first of all, as usual, the world building is fantastic. These two worlds feel distinct and lived in, and they have really cool things going on. Painter's world, where there are actual nightmares and everything is dark and runs on this Heian, sounds like a dystopian, well, nightmare, but it manages to feel very normal. Everybody is just going about their normal day, eating their noodles, doing their jobs, dealing with these nightmares. Yumi's world has these plants that are light enough to ride on the thermal jets and giant crows that act like sheepdogs to keep them from flying away. Both of them are public servants after a fashion, and they kind of resent the service and how constricting it is. Sanderson jumps right in, introducing the worlds and the characters. I was hooked immediately. There's a really good blend here of familiar and totally alien. So you're interested in the stuff that's different, but you're anchored by the things that are similar to our real world. There's also plenty of mystery to keep you going through the story. Why are these characters suddenly connected? What is their backstory? What's going on with the spirits? Why is this nightmare stable, but it's not murdering people yet? Sanderson does a very good job of blending development of the two main characters with stringing the story along so you don't get bored. Except there's a little part of this that doesn't work in the middle, and I'll get there. And of course, we've got the famous Sanderson ending where everything comes together and it's so cool and it ends exactly the way you want. And that last quarter of the book, the action is rising to that crescendo and the pieces are falling together and you can't do anything with your life and nobody should speak to you because holy crap, how is this gonna end? Except, again, there is a tiny problem with the ending. Lastly, we get more Hoid, and there is never enough Hoid in the same way that there is never enough Lopin or Wayne. Sanderson has said that he is using these books to find Hoid's voice, and I'm loving that voice. It would seem that he also took some of the criticism about his simplistic prose to heart, and he is using Hoid to bridge that lithographic gap. He gets a lot more flowery when writing as Hoid, and it really adds a lot to the book. It also gives him the ability to do little asides and wall breaks from time to time. So it's a great book, but what didn't work? First of all, you're going to hate these two characters about halfway through. You like them again, but it gets tedious in the middle. The other thing's pretty minor, but the ending is not quite as clean as other work you've seen from this author. All good character development needs flawed characters. Unfortunately, these two get broken down into downright unlikable territory about halfway through, and I was miserable for a couple of chapters. First, as I've mentioned, Painter is a little awkward, and he likes to fantasize that his job is cooler than it is. Well, it turns out he's not just awkward, he's a total loser. He doesn't work hard, he has a lot of flaws that are completely his own fault, even though he's blaming everybody else, and when the story shoves all of his faults in his face and he has to own up to it, he retreats and broods for a couple chapters. Seriously, for like 1 or 2 whole chapters, while in his world, he doesn't say anything. Just self-absorbed pity party. I hate brooding characters, which is a problem because I do kind of like YA books. He is despondent. He's getting pushed around in Yumi's world. He has no agency in his own. It was not fun. Fortunately, right about the time I was going to quit the book because I was tired of his crap, he grows a pair and starts taking action, and it moves the story forward. Yumi goes the other direction. When she first hits Painter's world, she is confused, she's bewildered, everything is so foreign, it's dark, everybody's relaxed, but her stress kinda turns her into a bitch. They're both undergoing a lot of stress, and Painter's response is to be selfishly withdrawn, and her response is to be selfishly bossy. Like I said, it doesn't ruin the book, it does come back, just know that in the middle, you will not be rooting for either of these people. The other issue, and like I said, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of this, but the ending doesn't carry that same aha from his other works. Take the Mistborn trilogy, for example. I think those books are the pinnacle of this thing that he does. When you get to the end of that 3rd book, and things start happening, and stuff is revealed, you might just put the book down for a second and reflect on the fact that he has been dropping hints and putting this in your face since the 1st chapter of the 1st book. He was laying it out for the entire series, and when it comes together, it just Oh, Sanderson famously writes for the ending, and that trilogy has one hell of an ending. Don't get me wrong, this book also had a cool ending, it just didn't have that same effect of, how did I not see this coming? It all fits together! In fact, this ending is so surprising and a bit complicated that Hoyd takes a chapter to stop an info dump to fill in the gaps for you. It's not bad, I don't want to sell it that way, it's just not what you've seen before. The ending is still neat, the explanation you get from Hoyd is still cool, the book ends exactly how you want it to. I got a little emotional at the end, it's a very good ending. Should you buy this book? Hell yes you should, but you should buy it in physical form, preferably hardback, for two reasons. One, this is gorgeous, just like the other two. These physical editions are more than just words on paper. They have beautiful illustrations. These are well designed and will look great on your shelf, but they also add something to the read with the illustrations. Frugal Wizard's Guide has been exemplary in this regard of the three. It has these little doodles that tell their own story, and it's got these FAQs because it is a guide after all. With Tress, she goes through these different colored seas, and the chapter marker gets more intricate the longer she's in that sea. You really want to own these guys in hardcover, but beyond that, Spotify and Speechify suck, and I will now rant about it. You can't find these books on Audible, and this is a little bit of a gray subject. Sanderson is taking a stand against Audible's author share, which is 40%. If you're exclusive with Audible, it's only 25% you get to keep if you're not exclusive. Those are absolutely garbage rates. A couple of years ago, Epic Games, makers of Fortnite, sued Apple quite famously because Apple kicked them off of their App Store because they were trying to circumvent Apple's pay system because Apple keeps 30% of all sales. That 70-30 split is kind of industry standard for all digital storefronts, but Audible keeps up to 75%. That's crazy. It takes a big player to make a stand on stuff like this, so I respect Sanderson standing up for the little guys. But I felt a little rug pulled because he made this announcement after the Kickstarter. I mean, I was going to buy the books regardless, let's not pretend otherwise, but I do feel a little disrespected. There is another side to this. We do need to be fair. Audible's cut is disgusting. However, some of you don't know what it was like to buy audiobooks before Audible existed. It was like $50 at least for one book. You'd get some CDs and the selection was terrible. You'd go to Borders,
which was the style at the time,
and there was a shelf about as wide as I am, and that was it. You got what you got, and you don't throw a fit. No, it rhymes better the other way. Audible kind of created the audiobook market as we know it today. They took all the risk, they put up all the money, they did all the work. The cut is obscene. However, it's a cut of sales to a market that basically didn't used to exist. Authors now have access to customers they never could have reached before. Audible also brought the price down. $15 max is what you're going to pay. It's more like $12 when you buy a pack of credits. If you've never used Audible, there's a link in the description for a free month. I'm sorry, I have to do that. It's my job now. The point is, Audible is not just some greedy giant that stepped in and stole the audiobook market. They kind of created that market, and they made it cheap and accessible and easy for everybody. So I understand authors' resentment of them because that cut is disgusting, and I appreciate Sanderson wanting to stand up for the little guys. However, I also kind of see Audible's side of it, that they built the whole thing. Regardless, he made a stand, but he did assure us there were other alternatives. You can get these books on Spotify and Speechify, and I have had to try both. Originally, I tried Spotify because, first of all, I've heard of that one, and also I wanted to see what everybody was talking about with their music service. I will say I like the music side of Spotify, especially because you can find public playlists from people that share theirs. Amazon Music, which I used to use, they do have playlists, but they're curated by Amazon experts. Screw you guys. I want someone who is in love with 2000s pop punk to make a list. That's the list I want. So I got a Spotify Premium Family membership because I hate ads and I am willing to pay them away. And we got the family because my wife and I both wanted to use it and we figured that would be cheaper. Except you can't share audiobooks that you purchase with your family on your family membership. So now we have to decide whose account gets to redeem the one code that we get for each book. It's not mine. So I tried Speechify, and holy crap, it is terrible. This app sucks. It's a cool idea. It's a program that reads things for you out loud while you're reading them, and then you can increase the speed so you can get through stuff faster. I do this when I'm doing my Bible reading. I have it read to me while I'm reading it, and I find that my retention is higher that way. The problem is that the app is hot garbage. The controls are not intuitive, those that exist. It's missing some basic features. You cannot download the audiobooks, so it has to search a cloud library every time you open the app, and it is incredibly slow. It pauses at the end of each chapter while it loads the next chapter, and that's only if your phone is on. If your phone is locked, the next chapter ain't gonna load. It does not integrate with the phone, so there's no listening controls on the lock screen or the notification bar. It will not pause itself if you have to take a call or your GPS has to say something. It's a terrible experience. With Audible, you can share with your whole family. You can get it on any device you log into. They have cornered the audiobook market through convenience and customer service. In my house, we have quiet time in the middle of the day. I don't care if you nap or not. Everybody, for 2 hours, quiet time. And all of my kids chill out and listen to audiobooks on Audible. One account, every device in the house, different books. They've just made it easy. That is why my 250 book library stays with them. I'm sorry. It's possible that these are going to come to Audible once the campaign is over and all the releases are done sometime next year. Like I said, I 100% suggest you get these in physical form. They are gorgeous, but if you're keen to get an audio version, you might want to wait. And that kills me to say because these are the narrators for it's Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. They are fantastic. So you got to check these books out. Are you already getting them? Are you getting a quarterly book subscription? What do you think about these books so far? And how do you feel about this whole audiobook situation? I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.